Hey everybody, I'm Ben from InterNACHI.
I'm Matt with Cornerstone Inspection Services.
And we're going to inspect this house. Actually, we're going to inspect the chimney. I know a little secret. There's a roof leak. It's coming from the chimney area. And Matt here is a roof consultant and a master inspector. And he's going to help me figure this out. I'm doing a home inspection. There's a roof leak, but I don't know where it's leaking or how it's leaking, so I need some help. I need like a mentor or someone who knows more than me. As a home inspector, I don't mind saying, I don't know, but I'll figure it out for you. And so Matt is here, he's gonna help me figure it out.
Yep.
So Matt, you're a licensed home inspector?
Yep.
And you're like a roof consultant.
Yeah, so a lot of roofing companies hire me to consult whether a big part of it is the insurance restoration space, but also just general roof construction. Leak diagnostics is a big one.
Leak diagnostics.
And then storm damage assessment is a big breadth of it too.
Okay, and today I have you up on the roof.
Yep.
I'm a chicken, but you're not.
That's okay.
It's kind of steep and slippery.
Yeah, and it's metal.
And it's metal, yeah.
Yep.
It rained last night, but it's kind of dry now.
Yeah.
And I got a garden hose for you.
Yeah, that's
and we're
perfect.
gonna do like a water test.
Perfect.
We're gonna try to squirt some water.
Yep.
Kind of imitate a heavy downpour.
Yeah, and especially with the steeper slopes on the metal and things like that, hopefully we can get the same volume of water, but we'll do our best with the hose.
And throughout the home, I wanna show you where I have marked areas where there are water marks.
Okay.
And maybe some water damage and
Perfect.
points. So we're gonna go up on the top.
Yep.
Run water.
Yes.
See if we can get it to leak.
Yep.
And then below that area, there are areas that are indicating that this is where the roof is leaking.
Right, wet marks, things like that.
Yeah, and so when a home inspector is doing a home inspection
Yep.
and you're in the crawl space, actually I was in the crawl space here and I saw water marks.
Yep.
And wherever there's water, think about above your head.
Next,
Yeah, and go all the way up as high as you can.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's all you can do.
So we're gonna go all the way up to the chimney
Yeah.
cap. We're gonna take a look at that.
Yep.
And then try to figure out where there's a hole, right? There's gotta be a hole
There's got to
or
be
a seam
some
or,
kind of opening or something that wasn't installed correctly.
Yeah.
Or if it was a shingled roof, maybe a bird, but in this case, probably not.
Yeah.
But all kinds of different stuff could happen.
And this is a wide chimney stack.
Yes, probably too wide to not have a cricket on it.
Yeah,
but
what's a cricket?
A cricket is, some people call it a saddle, but it's like a mini roof structure that diverts water to either side of a wide chimney.
Yeah.
So if a chimney is narrow enough, it doesn't need a cricket, but if it's over 30 inches in the state of North Carolina, you need sort of a little gable roof structure that has a ridge and two slopes and diverts water to either side of the chimney.
Diverts water. This whole idea of the roof and the exterior and the flashing is all about trying to divert water away from the property.
Moisture is the biggest enemy of any building product,
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just making a crazy statement.
No, that's
but
true. Yeah.
I would say moisture is the biggest enemy. So as much as you can get it first not to penetrate the home, and then once it's diverted off of the home, away from the home.
Okay.
So it's kind of a progression from sky to like get away from my house.
That's right. Okay, so inside, I want to show you some marks that I found, and we're going to follow it all the way up, and we're going to run some water.
Sounds
See if we
awesome.
can get it to leak.
I love it.
All right, come on, let's go. Okay, Matt, this is the first indication of a water problem. You really can't see it, but there's water marks and a little bit of water staining on the wood and on the mortar joints.
Yep.
Okay, so this area is directly below the chimney stack.
Yeah.
So let's go inside. I'll show you more. So above our heads, where that smoke detector is, it was taken off because the water was leaking and causing the detector to alarm.
Was it coming through the detector too?
It was dripping through the detector and landing on the floor.
Okay.
And there's some cracking in the corner joint.
The tape joint,
Yeah, so that's another indication. Cracking in the corner and water marks, and obviously when there's a missing smoke detector, it could be that it doesn't work, or it could be like a roof leak.
Right.
Yep. So Matt, there's a hole in the wall.
Yeah, there is. It's really nicely done.
And it's been done to help diagnose the problem.
Yeah.
Because it's leaking somewhere within the wall, and we're trying to find the original location. So we're on the second floor bedroom. This is the corner of the chimney stack.
Yep.
Up above is the roof line, and the masonry stack is above
we're
there.
right there.
And in here you can see the interior flue of the fireplace.
Right.
So we're literally just following
this
that
way
vertical.
with the chimney. Yeah, exactly.
So it hasn't taken a turn or anything. Sometimes chimney stacks turn or anything. I think this is just one straight
Seems like
shot.
a straight shot, yeah.
And what do you see there?
There's a watermark not only on the left side, but also on the right side of that.
Yeah, there's a few.
Probably water pooling up right on top of that 2x4, which is right at the chimney flashing, like where there's not a cricket, like we said.
Yeah, so in the entry, below our feet, there's a watermark on the ceiling, and now there's a watermark on the ceiling above us, second floor, so we gotta keep going.
Yep.
Okay, let's go in the attic.
Let's do it.
All right. All right, Matt, we're in the attic, and this is foam insulation, so the roof is insulated, which is a great thing, but it's blocking our vision.
Yeah.
So here is it's kind of like where that saddle cricket should be, and we really can't see anything, but we do those little marks there.
Yeah, it seems like probably when the volume of water is really high, it's not a huge stain, but there's some water getting in there, so we know it's back there. I think if it's closed cell foam, it's holding that moisture on the other side.
Yep.
Some kind of a little pathway in there somewhere is letting that excess water in to at least show us where it's getting in. It's probably not the main part because it's such a small stain.
Such a small stain. We saw more watermarks on the stud wall in the bedroom there.
Yeah, for sure. So this is just another good symptom of the issue, knowing that the water is here, but probably more problems behind the foam.
Yep. Okay, so the next stop is on the roof.
Yeah.
Let's go to the roof. All right, we're on the roof. Well, I'm on the safe part. Matthew is down there by the roof leak area. And we've got our garden hose, and we're gonna try to figure out what's causing this roof leak by using the garden hose and trying to replicate a really heavy rainstorm. So let's go visit Matthew, see what he's up to.
So the first thing we're gonna do is, because we've recognized this is over 30 inches, the back of this chimney, so it really should have that cricket we talked about on the back of it, diverting water from either side. So with a metal roof that's as steep as this one is, you're really getting a high volume of water crashing into the back of this without any way to divert it away. So it's only relying on the flashing here, which looks a bit substandard to me. So we'll get some water going down this slope behind me, crashing into the back. Hopefully we can simulate enough water volume to simulate a big heavy rainstorm. We'll see if it leaks. So what we know is, based on the location where the water was coming in inside, we know that it was towards that outside edge anyway, because when you're standing inside, you can kind of size up where the chimney flue is coming down, and it was coming inside looking this way to our left, which would be that outside edge of the chimney. So spraying water down there at the flashing, again, simulating how much water would be coming down 4 bays of this metal roof, that volume of water is getting under the flashing, which wasn't done correctly because they used 2 pieces. And we were talking about that earlier. Maybe the first guy comes in, puts in a piece that's not quite long enough. Second guy's come in after the fact, jam another piece under, and so it's not done correctly. And who would ever see it, because who would ever be up here?
And the chimney is more than 30 inches wide.
Yes, for sure.
And when, by code, building code, you need
by building code, you need to have anything, don't quote me on whether or not 30 inches is included in that, but if it's over 30 inches, for sure. And this is over 30 inches. This is over 40 inches. So it needed to have some kind of a structural modification done to the back of the chimney before these roofing panels went on, before the decking went on underneath this. They really should have modified the framing here to come up with a better water diversion system to get it to the outside of that chimney there and to this valley here. They've got a great big valley here that they've really underutilized, because most of the water, the intention was to divert it that way. But now you're catching this whole volume of water there and forcing it into the end of a dead valley that's literally that big.
So, do you think this chimney can be fixed as is, or do you think some construction is needed? Do they need to solder it or reflash it?
I think probably the immediate thing, or the best thing that you could do, is probably, nobody's gonna like to hear me say this, but I would redo that chimney flashing, which isn't the biggest thing. I'm not asking them to restructure this now that we've already got the roof on, but I would definitely redo that flashing that's in 2 pieces, because the overlap there between those 2 pieces is so minimal. It didn't take me, I mean, we weren't up here an hour hosing it with water.
That was about 20, 30 seconds.
Good volume of water getting there, which goes to your point where it doesn't happen in light rains, it only happens during the really heavy rainstorms where you've got, this is a really steep metal roof.
Yep.
And that water coming off of there is going to be coming off pretty hard and fast, and it's going to be all pooling up. And that may be part of it, is just as the water pools towards that end, because again, they, by design, wanted the water to get out that way.
Yeah.
Well, that pinches down to a really small bottleneck. So if there's a pool of water there, and this is splashing that water up, it's forcing it into a place where water really shouldn't go.
Up underneath the counter flashing.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. So I'll show you a little bit closer the details of the flashing that's causing the roof leaks. And it's right here. You can see the edge and the makeup of the flashing. It's not properly installed. Let me show you the pathway of the water that's coming down the roof, going through the flashing areas and leaking into the house. So what's happening is, during a heavy rainstorm, all of that water in this very large, steep slope metal roof is coming down into this dead end drainage area behind this very large, wide chimney stack that has no kickout flashing or saddle flashing. Here you can see the pathway of the water. It comes down the roof and it goes underneath, puddles up, because it's very narrow down there. Puddles up even higher than the flashing itself. We could imagine water coming up a few inches, even above the masonry. And water is getting underneath this secondary piece of flashing, underneath this top piece of flashing, and going behind here. And right here is where that rotten piece of wood is. We touched it with our fingers and it was wet and rotten. So water is just traveling up and under, down, up and under, because this has no proper saddle flashing and it gets all clogged up down there. It's restricted in that area and just puddles up and comes in this way. And then it drains downwards and manifests itself in the lower floors. And that's what's happening on this chimney stack. It's actively leaking every time there's a heavy rain because we need a lot of water puddling up and coming inside. This is poor installation of the flashing, improper. When you have a chimney that's wider than 30 inches, you need a saddle or cricket flashing according to International Residential Code. That's why this chimney stack is leaking. Another indication that the roofer was trying to fix something that he knew wasn't right was all of these haphazardly installed fasteners. And they're not even tight. Like this one is not even tight up on the surface. So this is allowing water to go underneath here and leak in. So they added a couple things, put one there, there, foot down there, a few down there, just trying to tighten things up, because they know there's something seriously wrong with this poor workmanship of flashing at the chimney area. So always look for haphazardly installed fasteners that should never be installed here. This is a terrible, terrible way to fix a problem. You should never have silicone like this squirting out and have some kind of fastening to see if we can tighten things up. They're obviously loose. And here's a piece of metal that's installed here, and you can see a fastener pushing through the metal. This is no good either. So there's a fastener here, probably something similar to that, that's underneath this piece of metal. So this piece of metal needs to be removed or opened up, that fastened down flat before it pops through. Another defect. All right, so we're on a roof.
Yep.
And we're gonna take a look at the asphalt shingle roof. And maybe you can answer a few questions I have.
Yeah, absolutely, I'd love to. This is my wheelhouse.
Okay, let's do it.
All right.
Okay, as a home inspector, we inspect the vent flashings.
Yep.
What do you see with these vent flashings here?
Firstly, it seems like maybe the metal guys fastened them down because they've got metal roof fasteners there with rubber grommets. Nothing too functionally wrong with that, but it kind of sticks out as minimal as it might be.
Yeah.
You really want as little obstruction to water getting off the roof as possible. And with this being about a 312 slope, you know, anything that hinders water from an easy path off the roof isn't favorable. And then another big thing that I always kind of preach about is these vertical left and right edges here. You really want to see those sealed up because you can kind of, again, I wouldn't recommend using a sharp tool. It's the only thing I got on me, but you can see that knife kind of tucked in there. That's a great place for water to get in. And water tends to run laterally somewhere around 6 inches once it gets behind something.
Yeah.
So if you've got a fastener anywhere within 6 inches of the edge of an unsealed flashing, that water's gonna get in at the shank of the fastener. So I would prefer to see that, at least just add a little sealant to the left and right vertical edges, and then we're protected from water getting in there.
And these tend to leak more than anything else. Like
yeah, ironically, everybody kind of notices this part because this is a soft neoprene. This is sort of more of a composite, like an ABS plastic type of thing. Maybe not ABS, but it's a composite material. So this will tend to dry rot after, you know, some amount of years. There's a big debate on that, but
yeah,
I would say it's maybe a 7 to 10 year product at best. Some people say 5 to 7. So that starts to rot around, but I've got a close friend who owns a roofing company who said he gets a lot more calls from this leaking than from these leaking there. So usually in a bathroom or a kitchen, if there's a leak, it's gonna have something to do with a pipe vent flashing, because that's what these are here for, is to kind of add air back into a system so there's no vacuum when you flush a toilet or when you run a sink.
Yep.
So that part of it, again, it's not something really crazy. Is it 100% gonna leak? Maybe not 100%, but we don't care, because if it leaks, it's not any less of a percentage of a leak once it leaks.
Yeah, once it leaks.
So if it's leaking, it's leaking. So yeah, it's something that I'd probably want addressed, again, simply with like a roof tune-up type of thing where somebody can come up here with a caulking gun and just caulk the, and you've got a good amount of flashings on this roof. There's 2 over there, 2 over here, and there's a metal one on the back of the slope over there. So again, this is maybe even more egregious where you've got such a big area exposed. I'd be wondering if water can get in here at some high volume. Could we maybe even get in where, because again, beneath this flashing, obviously underneath the roofing material, underneath the underlayment, you've got decking. Well, these come through a hole that's not perfectly cut for this. It's just cut, you know, with a saw.
Yeah.
So there's a big hole around this pipe. So if the water can get in all the way up here, it's possible it could even get in right here at like a hole in the decking, which would be absolutely, you would see that pretty quickly. So again, don't know if it's going to be a problem, but once it's a problem, it's a pretty big problem.
Now the shingles themselves, what's the one tip about inspecting the shingles?
I would say if it's a newer roof, you're looking for installation cues. So the big thing that I look for is the seams on the edge of the shingle. Are they lining up to where, here's a good spot here. So this is the seam of a shingle, this is the seam of a shingle. You've got 4 courses of shingles staggered on what's called the stair-step method.
Yeah.
That's the correct method of installation, so that's a good thing. If you saw it going back and forth staggered, that's called the racking method, and that's not an approved method of installation for laminated shingles. If it's a 3-tab shingle, it's still kind of like a, you really shouldn't, but there's nothing in the manufacturer's specifications for most 3-tab manufacturers that would tell you you absolutely can't do that, but it's not preferred, and it's definitely not okay on this being a laminated shingle. You can't install it that way. Now
I noticed that there's some scuff marks on
those
shingles there.
You know, like you and I are standing here because this is a 312 pitch, this is about a 712 pitch, everybody's going to be kind of congregating on the 312 coming up the 712, whether this way or that way. So there's a bit of a tolerance in the sense that I usually tell people these blemishes occur on every roof. This is a little bit heavy, so it's something that I would definitely call out in an inspection report to say this is probably out of tolerance for what could be considered normal wear and tear from foot traffic and things like that. And some of these, you can see if you come up close on this one, that's a pretty bad gouge where I'm starting to see the fiberglass matting material of the shingle, and so that's going to degrade pretty quickly. These granules are made of crushed ceramic, and they're designed to deflect the UV rays from degrading the underlying asphalt. So really any dislodging of those granules isn't preferred, but it's part of normal wear and tear. They're going to shed as the roof gets older. We know that this is about a 2-year-old roof. I should never be seeing fiberglass matting material. That's a bad degradation of that asphalt. And so that could potentially, again, wear into a hole. It's actually right near the outside edge of a shingle, so we know that there's a fastener right here at the edge of this shingle. If that wears into a hole, again, if the water tends to walk left and right, it's going to run right over a fastener there. Again, definitely going to leak. Not definitely, but definitely a much better chance of a leak than if there wasn't a hole there. So yeah, probably out of tolerance as far as what we call mechanical damage, which is surface scuffs and anything that's not hail or wind related.
Cool.
So we're on the lower portion of the roof here. It's EPDM, it's flat. So there's not a whole lot in the field areas to really look at. Again, if there's any obvious gouges or tears, this is ethylene propylene diene monomer. So it's pretty rubbery material. So it deflects a lot of stuff. So again, if something gouges this and puts a hole in it, that's pretty bad. It's installed, it looks like you got your fasteners with their plates sealing down the polyiso in the substrate. So really the main thing to see on this, again, just a general look. There's no real glaring issues. There's no gouges. There's no tears. A little bit of water, but it rained within 24 hours, so we're not going to consider it to be ponding until it's there for 48 hours. So the main thing is flashing and any transitions of roofing material, in this case seams. So we've got a seam tester here. It's just a little pocket handheld one, kind of nice because you can just flip it out, and it's a little bit sharp, so you don't really want to go diving and digging into anything, but you just kind of give a soft test on the seams, and everything looks pretty good, other than we can see a couple bubbles, so we know that there might be a weak spot in the seam there. So again, I'm not jamming that in like a knife, but that's kind of walking in there a little bit. So we know that that could probably use a little bit of sealant. Another bubble here, we're going to check that, and that's actually sealed up, so you're probably not getting any water in there. So that's a good thing.
And you can use your thumb to...
Yeah, so if this bubble had a bunch of water in it, we'd probably just kind of run it over, like getting the last little bit of a tube of toothpaste, and nothing comes in there. The bubble actually translated over to here. So when I pushed in, and you could see the bubble come over to that roofing material, that means there's no hole here. So that air is trapped underneath the seam, not in between the seam.
And what about that one?
That one looks like that's in the seam. So when I push that bubble and the air doesn't pop up over here, we know that it's coming out whenever I push it out, and that means that there's actually a breach in the seam there. So that's something that should get some sealant added to it so it doesn't start leaking. And these leaks kind of take a little bit to manifest because they've got a lot of stuff to work their way through. They've got to get to the seam of the polyiso board insulation and leak their way in through there. So once you have a problem on a flat roof that you can see underneath, you get a pretty good sized problem.
And what about the edge flashing?
The edge flashing, yeah, so we can kind of give it a quick feel. I always keep a small tape measure on me just because, even just for regular building materials and stuff, if you don't know what something is, throw a tape measure on it. So I can see here, we've got a 3-inch profile edge flashing. That's appropriate, that's correct. And then we just similarly just want to, again, without gouging into anything, without doing anything too invasive, there's a little bit of a bubble there. It's starting to work its way in. Again, it's still sealed down. It doesn't let the seam tester all the way in, but again, we're starting to see a problem manifest at some of the areas. And again, as we work our way around, let your eye work towards areas like this where there's inconsistency. So there's a bit of a bubble there, so you can kind of see as you work your way down the edge, a few more little bubbles. But again, anytime I see a bubble, give it a little test with the seam tester. nothing too bad to write home about. So it's sealed down, but something to pay attention to. I mean, these are 20-year roofs or so. It's only 2 years old. I would have loved to not have seen any holes in any of the seams, but you know, a few here and there, we can get those patched up and avoid any serious long-term issues.
Well, Matt, we did a lot of work at this house to find the source of a problem that really hasn't been seen by anyone for a long time. And it's coming from probably just a little area, a flashing area. And it's caused some damage.
For sure.
And it was difficult to find.
It was difficult to find. We could see what the, you know, a problem that we can visually identify on the roof is a big missing cricket. But yeah, pinpointing where exactly the water was coming from to get one room to the next room to the next room. It was a lot.
So as a trainer of a home inspector,
Sure.
I would tell that person, call out a cricket.
Sure.
Measure the width, or at least estimate the width. If you see a very wide chimney stack, it needs a proper cricket or saddle, and that is in the building code, and it's been there for years.
Yeah, and familiarize yourself by measuring maybe easier to access ones, because on this, we're not probably, I mean, I can put a tape on it, but maybe the next guy can't. So if you're in easier, more accessible situations, find out what 30 inches looks like. And then when you look at something like this, you could even say, I couldn't visually verify, but it looks like more than 30 inches that should probably have a cricket on it.
And if the contractor just followed the standards, the building standards, and made a cricket, I think the flashing would have been probably standardized as well.
That flashing that's there wouldn't have been there if there had been a cricket, because the cricket would have been running down either side. We would have never had this issue if he would have followed the prescriptive code.
And because they didn't, they're trying to fiddle something, and they're trying to funnel things into a dead end area, and it just puddled up, and the flashing is like poor workmanship, I would say.
Yeah, I think poor workmanship is probably the right way to say that. It should have been done, if you're going to do it the way that they did it, they needed to really run one continuous piece where they ran one piece and like jammed another piece in there and then fastened it. And then, without adding the cricket, it's just compounded like the steep slope, the big roof area, the small runoff area. It all kind of compounded to a much bigger issue than it really had to be if they could have just modified maybe the framing, added the cricket at some point during the building process, and followed the prescriptive code design and put a cricket back there.
And the watermarks, they're really difficult to find. In the crawl space, it's very difficult to crawl around and look up. It's completely dark. And
not everybody's going to cut a hole in the wall either. So
yeah, that's right. And but the obvious thing was the cricket, but the thing that was difficult to find was probably the very small opening. In relation to the whole house. I mean, this opening is as big as my hand, or it's about this really big, but it caused all of this problem. And no one has seen it for years. So now you're concerned about rotted decking and maybe some rotted framing member or something like that. It's just been years and years and years. Every time a heavy rain comes in, it's a little spot, but if you let it go for a long time, the water is the biggest enemy, right? So if a home inspector obviously doesn't see the saddle flashing on a very wide chimney, call that out. But maybe if you see something that's just not right at the flashing area,
and even from the ridge area, you look down and said, hey, what's going on with that? If something jumps out at you, having looked at all the training that we do, all the stuff that we do, you're always looking at the right way things are done. If anything jumps out at you as kind of funky, just call it out and say, I don't know, it doesn't look quite right to me.
Well, what didn't look quite right in the crawl space was a couple little puddles. In the middle, not really in the middle, it was about 3 feet away from the exterior wall. So I knew it wasn't like a downspout or the rain chain not draining away.
There shouldn't be water
something
in the middle
else.
of the room,
And if you look up, that water puddle was caused by something, what's that, 30
Must be 30 feet away, something in that vicinity, 30 feet, with 2 rooms in between, and then all the way down in the crawl space. So it literally crosses like 3 floors, kind of.
That's amazing how far water can travel.
It's amazing. And it does.
And it can go this way too.
It does weird things in between, and we saw that because once it hits something, it starts running, and that's how it ends up sort of in the middle of that room, whereas it was closer to the chimney in the upstairs room. And it can do some damage if we're not calling stuff out a little bit. Even if it's something that you're just not totally sure about, just raise the concern, have somebody check it out, and then they can identify, hey, this flashing wasn't done correctly, and then maybe whoever owns the home can do a little deeper dive and see if it's causing any damage behind the walls.
Now, you're an InterNACHI training partner, and you make yourself available to home inspectors if they have a question Like if I had a question about that flashing.
Oh yeah.
You've made yourself available.
Yeah, well, on the webinar, I always put like my cell phone number
yeah,
there,
right.
so I'm super available for right now. Yeah, I'm totally available.
Really
Even just
appreciate it.
simple questions and things like that. I love answering this stuff. I mean, like you, I love diving in stuff
Yeah,
and
it was
figuring
a lot of
it
fun.
out. Yeah, it was a blast.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Matt, I really appreciate
Yeah,
it. Thank
good
you
to
so
see you
much
guys.
for
Thank
helping
you.
me out.
Yeah.
It was really a lot of fun.
You got it.
I'm Ben from InterNACHI,
I'm Matt with Cornerstone.
and we'll see you at the next inspection.